We are, it seems to me, living in what some call a liminal period of time. Liminal is not a word we hear very often, but I've been finding it a helpful word. It comes from a root simply meaning threshold. We're living in a threshold time. On a threshold, you're neither here nor there. You're not where you were, you're not where you're going to be. You're in between, and it may not be clear where you're going next. I think that pretty accurately describes the time that we're sharing. And you know the experience of going from one room to another and then forgetting why it was you were going from one room to another, what you were looking for, what you were going to do. I know you know that experience because it's universal. In fact, scientific studies have demonstrated that it's pretty much universal. It's not clear why, but it may be that somehow, for whatever reason, going through a threshold through a doorway clears the brain out in some short-term memory, maybe just making room for whatever is coming next, for whatever we need to do in that next room. Well, what would it be like if we paused on the threshold and try to go back, or ready to go forward? And now I'm talking again about the threshold of this time in which we're living. What if we were to pause and allow ourselves really to experience the threshold, what it might be clearing out, what it might be preparing us for the next room of our shared lives? Well, it seems to me that another, and I think related, way of describing what we're all living through, each in our, very much in our own way, in the midst of our own circumstances, is something that we all also share. It's another universal experience, and that is the experience of grief. Now, many are right now experiencing deep mourning for someone they love who has died. At the same time, most, if not all of us, may be grieving the lives we left behind only weeks ago, pre-pandemic. That's a kind of grief too. Well, one thing that characterizes the initial experience of grieving the loss of someone who's died is this disorienting feeling that while our world has utterly changed, the rest of the world is just going on as if nothing had changed, as if everything is fine. For us, it's not fine at all. And worse than that, we know we can't go back to the way our lives were with our dear one by our side, and we may not have a clue yet as to what life could possibly look like moving forward into some sort of future, the next room of our lives. But we know that somehow we must, of course, go forward, take those next steps. And the best way to prepare ourselves to go forward actually is to allow all the feelings of grief, including this disorienting threshold feeling of being set apart from the rest of the world, of not quite knowing what the next room holds. Yet at the same time, managing to have enough faith that, as a Quaker saying has it, that way will open. We don't know how or when, but if we have the patience to wait, just to wait a while, sometimes a long while, at this threshold we did not ask for but cannot escape. And way almost always does open sooner or later, and fits and starts it does. When it comes to grief, personal grief, we never stop missing our dear one, of course not, and the life that we had. But we do find our way forward somehow into the next room, beyond the threshold, beyond this liminal, in-between time. So it might be for all of us, it seems to me, as we live through this shared liminal threshold time of pandemic. Maybe, as I've suggested, grieving the life that we were living before the pandemic changed, it seems, everything. Wishing for the good old days, all that long, no, only weeks ago, knowing we cannot return to those days. Rather than, can we be patient enough, even as life around us resumes some vague semblance of normal activity, patient enough to allow and be part of helping, one way or another, to remake the world a better one than the one we've left behind. After all, and I've been preaching this to my congregation in one way or another for the past 2 months, after all, how the world was before was careening towards climate disaster. how the world was before was filled with too many, and still is filled with too many social inequities. How the world was before was too much rushing and not enough savoring. How the world was before was too much hate and division and not enough understanding, respect, and of course, love. An invitation then, it seems to me, is being offered to us through this unbidden pandemic. An invitation to each of us personally and to all of us together. An invitation to have the patience and even courage, because it's not easy, to allow this threshold, liminal time, to remain in it long enough for the new to emerge. Personally, in our own lives, as we perhaps reconsider, re-envision some parts of our lives, and collectively, all of us together. And to do so with faith that however unbidden this time in our lives is, and it is quite unbidden, it may indeed be clearing us out, like that short-term memory clearing us out for something new, maybe even better. And meanwhile, I'll conclude with this thought, meanwhile taking comfort, as I know I do, in much that remains and always will remain, even as so much changes. Comfort in the words of truth tellers, however difficult sometimes the words of truth may be, better than the alternative. Comfort too in goodness, all the goodness that we see around us during these days, and really always, there's so much goodness, so many good people. And comfort too in beauty. And the beauty all around us during this beautiful New England spring, and beauty that's always there if we seek it and choose to embrace and enjoy it. Truth, goodness, beauty, among the many names of the God who is beyond all names, the God of blessings, who embraces us always, who guides us into the next room. May it be so. Blessed be. And I wish you, all of you and your dear ones, everyone, many blessings of safety and health always. Amen.